Welcome to tonight's faculty research presentation, Tacking, New Directions in Ecological Research and Teaching. And I just remembered that I didn't put on glasses. So. I'm Dawn Emselman. I am the Director of Library Services at Salve, and tonight I am looking forward to welcoming Dr. Jim Chace. A few notes about the presentation. Please feel free to grab snacks now or enjoy them after. For students studying around us, is this mic zipping in and out? Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm going to try the other one. And Dr. Chace will share for about 45 minutes or to 1 hour, followed by questions. Now let's get to know our speaker. Jim Chace grew up exploring the woods, brambles, and coastline around Aquidneck Island. As a young person, he was deeply interested in nature, tracking evidence of fox activity after snow, and checking his have-a-heart traps in the morning before school. His most common catch was skunks, and it's a point of pride that he was never sprayed. His preoccupation with the natural world puzzled most of his family. While family gatherings often centered around sports, young Dr. Chace would rather go for a walk. However, key experiences set him on his current course. His stepmom made a tradition of bringing him to Sunday morning bird walks at Norman Bird Sanctuary. One high school summer, he had the opportunity to attend Grand Teton Science School. Dr. Chace remembers thinking, this is the kind of place I want to be, the kind of questions I want to ask, and the people I want to be with, and the lifestyle I want to live. Remembering these experiences in Grand Teton, he chose to study wildlife biology at University of Montana. However, he realized that while a large university may have all the things you want on paper, he found that the faculty cared more about their research and graduate students than their undergraduate advisees. His advisor was a legend in the study of wolves, but when they crossed paths on campus one afternoon, after meeting with him 3 times, the advisor stared at him with no recognition. This experience led him to transfer and to make sure he found the mentorship he wanted. And he went around Eastern Connecticut State University Environmental Sciences Department, knocking on professors' doors. In this way, he met his early mentors, Charles Booth and Phil Elliott. He took all their classes, and they took him to Belize, which was another life-changing experience. Dr. Chace remembers a sense of overwhelm. He was used to going to a place and recognizing birdsong. But in Belize, he didn't recognize anything, leading him to total sensory overload. This lack of knowing created a drive to use every moment to learn. He and the other students swam around an entire island at the edge of the ocean. They went caving in jungles where rivers flow underground from the mountains. These opportunities to explore and self-learn and the mentorship he received were so important that providing them has become a part of his educational mission. After graduating from Eastern Connecticut State, Dr. Chace drew on his experience teaching outdoor skills as a Boy Scout and a high adventure guide, and went to Texas to be an outdoor educator. While there, he met his wife, moved to Maine, and decided he wanted to be a scientist, applied to grad schools, and made his way to University of Colorado at Boulder. There, he found himself in a huge environmental sciences department, mentors and colleagues, all devoted to the study of the environment, created incredible collegiality, conversations, and knowledge sharing. Earning his way through grad school as a TA, Dr. Chace found his calling. In the current stage of his career, Dr. Chace holds a joint appointment in Salve's Departments of Biology and in the Department of Cultural, Environmental, and Global Studies, where he currently serves as chair. In classes, he asks open-ended questions where he doesn't know the answer, or matches classes with community partners who present the students with a problem, or he guides students to form their own questions. He maintains an active research program in hydroponics and avian ecology, working with students in the coastline, forest, and wetlands of Aquidneck Island, as well as field trips to New Hampshire, Cape Cod, Belize, and the Amazon basin of Brazil. They study bird behavior and measure water quality in ponds, streams, and coastal environments. Over the past 10 years, Dr. Chace has authored more than 25 peer-reviewed papers and given 9 papers at national conferences. Students are partners in investigation in all of this work. Knowing all of this, I am excited to welcome Dr. Jim Chace.
Wow, thanks for that introduction. That was really wonderful. I guess maybe the whole thing is over by now. Thank you. Can you hear me okay in the back? No. No, you cannot hear me okay in the back. You can see if we'll get this fixed then. Or I'll use that microphone. Can you hear me now, Colin? All right, we're good. All right, here we go. So we're good? We're good? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate the turnout, and so many people from different aspects of my career here at Salve. It's great to see you, and my great colleagues at the Northern Bird Sanctuary, who have a little table set up in the back there, so I'll have a little audience participation a little later, so be ready for that. But I'm really thankful for you being here. And Sister Betty is here, which is fabulous. One of my favorites coming in. So great. So we're going to get started. I'm going to share with you some of the things I've been doing. I had a sabbatical last spring, and part of coming off a sabbatical is I want to share with my community what I have done and what I bring back from that time. And in the term of the title of this talk, Tacking, we'll come back to that too, and I think you'll understand the analogy as I talk about some new directions that I'm taking with my teaching and research based on my experiences, especially during sabbatical, and really thinking back on the last 20 years of my career at Salve, and more importantly, thinking about the next 10 years or more of my time at Salve. So sabbaticals, if you're not familiar with what sabbaticals are, they're a wonderful privilege that some faculty are afforded. All faculty should be afforded, and I know that it's a challenge at this small university for everyone who deserves one to get one, so I feel incredibly fortunate to have had one. It means that for a semester, I don't teach or have responsibilities on campus, and I have time for my own work. And I have to put together a proposal of what I'd like to do, and a committee decides whether I'm worthy of this time. And then the university decides whether they can afford this time for me to be away, and they did. And during this time, it's a time for just time, which is a precious commodity. It's also a time to put towards production. In the first part of my talk, I'm going to talk about how I've summarized some of my important work that I've been doing with students, and then I'm going to share with you what I've used this time for is to learn some new things, and those things I'm bringing back, new techniques I'm bringing back to the university and to the students. And it's also given me time to reflect on both my journey of where I've been and also where I plan to go, and part of that has been a very deliberate period of time during sabbatical and during the summer to strategically plan my future. The fact that the bird sanctuary is here will give you a little bit of a hint as to where that's going. Okay, so first, sabbatical. Sabbaticals are fun because for a period of time when someone, like my schedule, my calendar is booked to the max, I feel like I'm working all the time. I love my work, I do, but when suddenly all those things disappear and you have time each day, each week, each month to decide what it is you want to do, you can do a lot of things. And if the work you're going to do can be done anywhere, well then, you should go everywhere, which is what I did. And I got to spend some really nice quality time with my daughters, a road trip out to Colorado in March, and doing some camping and skiing, and then back again in July. Get to be one of those dads I see on campus that I'm always so jealous of, who just drop in and see their daughter on campus. I got to do that. I got to take my canoe that I had refurbished during COVID. My COVID project was to refurbish a canoe. I finally got to put it on the waters in Maine and go paddling. I got to do the thing that all skiers love to do, is you get to go and catch the fresh powder when it falls because you have time. So I got to do that. And I got to spend more time with my wife who doesn't get to see me very much because I spend a lot of time here. And all the things that I've been able to achieve and be able to do, honestly, I couldn't do without her. So she deserves tremendous amount of appreciation for allowing me to do what I do. And any success that I have is certainly due to her, Tara, and she's over in the corner there, so you can thank her later. But any of the failures that I have are my own. Because she would have told me otherwise. And Tara and I were able to do like one of those bucket trips. You know, we went to Italy and we skied for a week. We'd never been to Europe skiing, and it was fabulous. We went to Cortina. Maybe you heard about Cortina during the Olympics. We got to ski there. It was just incredible. So anyway, and I got to North Dakota. I'm sure that's on everybody else's bucket list. But I got to North Dakota finally, 48th of the 48 states, so that was really fun too. So that was great. And also gave me time to do something I always wanted to do but could never do because I never had the time, and that was to jump on a NOAA ship as a volunteer scientist and go out to sea for 10 days and track seabirds and whales and count them. So my job was every day, wake up in the morning, sit on the deck, and count birds and whales until dark, and then go down below and sleep a little bit and do it again the next day. And sometimes it was kind of stormy like the picture here, and I couldn't count the birds and the whales, and that was okay, just kind of hang on and ride it out. And other days were just, incredible. And it was just amazing to be on this planet and to be out on the water and see nothing but water for days. Just incredible. Anyway, that's our track of our trek. It was fabulous. I could spend the whole time telling you about the trip. But that long-tailed Jaeger, anybody know that was a long-tailed Jaeger? No. That was one of my 10 new species, so I had 10 lifers on the trip. It was fabulous. Okay, but back to the sabbatical and what I actually did besides spend wonderful time doing cool things. I had some time to reflect. And this is going to tie into the title here of Tacking, so bear with me for a minute. If you're a sailor, you understand what I'm talking about. If you're not a sailor, let me explain. So I've grown up sailing. I was probably first sailing on Narragansett Bay before I was a year old. I'm sure that I was. And it's one of my favorite joys. And one of the things that sailors know is that wherever the wind is coming from, if you're trying to go in that direction, it takes a long time to get there. That is, you can't go straight where you want to go. You have to take these directional turns or tacking as you go upwind. And going upwind is a challenge because you're balanced between the angle of attack and speed. And you have to sort of drive that very precious line between both things. And the career is kind of like that. So during sabbatical, as I think about like that early stage of my career, moving upwind, and what I've always wanted to do ever since the Teton Science School was conserve biological diversity. That is my north wind, that is the direction I'm going in, and it's upwind, and it's a gale force, and it's hard. And my first part of my career in grad school was really looking at why are birds declining, looking at brood parasitic cowbirds and nest predators and urbanization and all those things. And then I did my postdoc, and then I came to Salve, and I really focused in on looking at specific species and why they're declining, like Canada warblers and big-nosed thrush. And then at Salve, trying to get students to come along on the journey with me meant I had to open up as many projects as I could that would involve students. So a hydroponic lab, water quality lab, sea duck surveys, bird banding in the mornings, and other studies of birds, and also marine sampling. Pretty much anything environmental that I could bring students into, we did. And that's been a long, wonderful 20-year journey. And this sabbatical is the inflection point where I get to go, okay, what have I done? And what am I doing next? I want to be very deliberate about the next thing so I don't just go on for the next 10 or 20 years just doing what I do. And that's the last part is I'm going to talk about, is where we're going. So, this is depressing. This is a depressing piece. This graph came out in the science paper in 2019, and it really drove home a number of things for me. This talks about how, looking across all of North America and Canada, that songbirds entirely have declined by 3 billion in total birds that you might find in any given year since 1970. Which is about 30% fewer than all the birds that we have living in that area during this time. And this is from a lot of different sources of data that these come from. And this has been repeated, studied in Europe, and a new study just came out 2 weeks ago that further explored this, finding similar things. And this is really compelling to me, one, because of my interest in conserving biological diversity, but also because that is my lifespan right there. That is, I mean, I was born before 1970, okay, but I probably didn't really notice my first bird until about 1972, maybe. And since that time, I can go back to those exact same places where I was as a young child and stand there today, and that means that there's 30% fewer birds in that same spot. So this decay of biodiversity is this thing that I've been pushing against and fighting against and trying to learn more about and share more about and see if we can solve. The reason why the birds are declining is because of us, which means that we can fix it. We just have to understand it. And so what I try to do, I think I stay pretty optimistic when it comes to these situations. When I look at these graphs, I see the opportunities, and what I really find the most important is surrounding myself by other people who think the same way, that we can solve these problems together. And again, I will come back to my good friends at the Northern Bird Sanctuary as being one of those places where you can just feel the optimism. Okay. First little piece of this, I'm going to tell you about a couple of things that I've done in terms of writing up my studies, so you get a sense of like what kind of work I do, so you get a sense of what work is coming. 3 particular studies during my sabbatical. I had the time to analyze the data, write these up, and get them ready for publication. One on sea ducks I'm not going to talk about. We can talk about sea ducks later, but I'm going to tell you about migratory stopover habitat. I'm going to tell you about this breeding bird success that we have right here on Aquidneck Island, and this is going to tie into where we're going. So for the students who are in the room, if you've come bird banding with me, just raise your hands. I think there's a few. Yeah, there's a bunch out there. Yeah, I can't possibly name you all. I'm sorry, if your name's not on this list, I really apologize, but you should be. I got as many as I could think of really fast and put them on there. And this goes back now almost 15 years, so there's been a lot of students. I couldn't possibly put on one graph. And we have been banding birds every fall at a place called Sweet Flag in Middletown near the police station. Let me just give you a little bit of a background. I'm going to open up this website. This, well, first let me describe this. So, it's an amazing phenomenon that during migration, at night, the sky will be aloft with millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of birds flying. While we sleep, they fly. And just before dawn, they come down to rest, and they find a safe place, and they try to refuel, and they wait for the next right kind of wind conditions and night conditions to go aloft again. And this map that you're seeing, it's static. I'm going to show you one that's live, or recorded last night. This looks like weather clouds. And in fact, the first meteorologists, when they were doing this work, were puzzled by these clouds that would seem to form right at dusk, emerge, and then move, and then disappear just before dawn, but yet never leave a trace of rain. They realized what it was lots of water droplets in the air called birds. So they had to build these algorithms, and they had to pull the birds or the noise out of the clouds, out of the radar, so they could just show us our Weather Channel clouds. Well, the ornithologists took the same algorithm and flipped it around, did the inverse. They pulled the clouds out, put the birds in. And this comes out of Colorado State and Cornell Lab, and they produced this called Birdcast. You can put it on your phone, you can look it up yourself, it's fabulous. Okay, so what you're going to see is like a heat map, right? So get the heat map, the brighter the color, the more birds there are. All right, now I'm going to show you last night's. So here we go. We're looking at last night. A red line is going to come across, that's the sun going down, and then you're going to see a yellow line come across, and that's the sun coming up. And this is last night. And it's got a counter of how many birds are aloft at a given time. So there you go. There goes sunset, and here come the birds. They are moving. Oh. Oh, man. Hang on. Thanks. Here we go. If I go like this. Hang on. I got this. This is like me in class. Another day. And open this up. All right, here we go. Fighting with it. Here we go. All right, I'm gonna let it run again. Hang on, here it comes. So it's just going day. Maybe just circle back around. There we go. Okay, now there goes sunset. Here come the birds. We're up to 100 million birds in flight last night. Right? And pretty soon, sunrise is coming. There it is. And the birds mostly go and rest, but some are still moving. So there we go. That's a night during early spring migration of what's going on over our heads as we sleep. It's just beyond amazing to me. And we can study this. We have the opportunity to be in a place where the birds are coming through and we can capture them for a short period of time and see this happen. So imagine, okay, back on our geography, the birds are coming out. I do only fall migration banding. I do have to teach classes, so I can't always be banding birds. So birds are coming out of the north, they're working their way south. They tend to come down towards the ocean. They don't want to fly over the ocean for the most part, and they move over land as they work their way south. And they've got to find these places to rest during the night. Now some birds will, I know Chris is looking at me over here, he's going, no, there's some birds that go over the ocean, Jim. He's right. Black-polled warblers will come here and they'll rest and they'll fatten up and then they'll take off and they'll fly straight out over the ocean and they'll come in around the Caribbean or even further south down to Venezuela before they alight again. So that's amazing. But most of them they're going to stop and refuel, just like you would stop at a gas station and refuel. And that's what they're going to do. So we go to this place called Sweet Flag. It's in a pretty urbanized area. If it's natural, it's got some maritime woodland and a lot of invasive plants. This is a place where the Land Trust has conserved in 2008, and I was part of the Land Trust at that point. And my question was, well, okay, well, this is great for protecting water and view sheds, but it's also probably really good for wildlife. Let's go get some students and get in there and go find out what's going on. Who's using this? When are they there? Are they gaining energy? So a little closer view, that's Bailey Brook, that's your drinking water supply. You can see the land that's been protected by the Land Trust. And in that little area, we put up some mist nets. We do this right at dawn, we open the nets. Depending on how many students I have to help me, we can open up as many as 10 nets. Every 20 minutes or so, we check the nets, we go out and we pull birds out of the net very carefully. We bring them back to the truck and we very quickly measure them, weigh them, and put a little band on the leg and let them go. And you're more than welcome to come join us Tuesday, Thursday mornings in the fall. It's really, really amazing. And I think what's amazing is what comes through. So many things are coming through. Just so many species come through, and they come through in these peaks based on when the weather's good, not so many when the weather's not great. And we've been doing this again for a number of years, so a picture is emerging. And I don't have this fully analyzed yet, but our capture rates of birds were really high when we first started in 2012, and it's kind of come down since then. Now, statistically, I'm not sure if that's really a valid statement, but it sure looks that way. I have to work on this a little more, and maybe that fits with our overall trends of birds. But in any event, birds come through, and over the years, we've caught over 3,000 birds. 68 different species of birds. And most of those birds are migratory birds. And some of them, of those migrants, are warblers. So it's really, really amazing what comes through. So we know that they're using it. All kinds of birds are using this habitat. It's an important habitat for the birds. Lots of different species that don't breed here. They breed up in the far north, and they're just stopping for a short period of time. And they're able to avoid being, they can hide in the brush, they can hide under dense cover, but they need to refuel. So the question is, are they gaining mass? And in this graph from a friend of mine, Sarah Morris, who published this a number of years ago, looking at Tennessee warblers, shows this pretty well, better than my data will, as you'll see. Where basically a bird that's captured later in the morning, if it's a good high quality site, should be gaining weight, right? They should wake up in the morning after a short rest, begin to feed themselves and gain mass. Now I can't catch a bird early and then recatch it later, that's just not going to happen. But if I catch enough birds at different times of the day, then they should weigh more in the later part of the day than the early part of the day. Does that make sense? Okay. So here are my data. Gray catbirds, we've caught almost 520 gray catbirds, and yeah, they're not really gaining mass. So they're there, large numbers, they're hiding, they've got good quality place to hide, but they're not putting on mass. Song sparrows, they're gaining some mass, so that's good news for song sparrows, but yeah, not for the swamp sparrows. They're not gaining mass. We basically have a very poor quality gas station for these birds to refuel is what we've got. And I'm looking at Joy over there from the bird sanctuary, and she knows why, because it's a bunch of invasive species. This isn't good fuel for birds. They need native plants. So we know that they need cover, and they've got cover, so that's good. We've created the habitat. It didn't become something else like a parking lot, so that's good. But we're full of invasive plants, not high quality food. These birds aren't really putting on mass, and that's a problem. So we can do better. We have to do better. So we're working on getting better. Some of you might know Kay Hertzwig, who works over in Missions, and her husband, Tyler, was a student of mine, and Tyler had a great project. He and I tagged about 50 shrubs of a native bayberry and also 50 shrubs of invasive Asian bittersweet, and Tyler went out every week and he counted all the berries on all of those. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And we produced this really wonderful graphic, and I think you can maybe see it pretty well. But the red line, the orange line is bayberry, a native, and it's got lots of berries available for the birds early in this season, and they drop off pretty fast. Why? Because the birds are eating them, and then they're gone. But the multiflora rose and others like that are available later in the season. So those gray bars are for that year when the most birds are coming through. So the birds that came in October were basically landing, and there was really not much for any native berries to eat. They were eating these invasives. So that was the problem. But when there's a problem, there's a solution. And the solution was go get some grant money. And thanks to the Southeastern New England Educational and Charitable Foundation, we were able to go in and buy a bunch of shrubs and get some student help. And Mike Chester and Mike Potter brought a tractor down and dug a bunch of holes for us, and we planted 100 shrubs of native plants. Now that was 2018. It's taken a while for these shrubs to grow, and the deer also like the shrubs. But we're getting there, and we're starting to get some really good berry production. So we're hoping we can begin to turn this site around with some good ecological work. And so that's going on. So the story is still to be told on what the outcome is going to be. But you can come down and see it in action. Now this brought us to the next part of what I've been doing for the last 5 years, looking at that place called Sweet Flag, but now comparing it to, I think some of you know, I've spent a little bit of time on Rhode Island. And on Rhode Island, we also were banding birds for 5 summers. This is in the summer, not migration. These are breeding birds between these two sites. We want to see how do the birds do in these two places. And so I'm going to highlight things in blue later in the graphs will be Rhode Island, and the red will be Sweet Flag. I'm going to focus on 4 species of birds that breed in both places. Yellow warblers, song sparrows, common yellowthroat, and gray catbirds. And there you can see some of my field assistants from one summer helping to pull birds out of the net. So the first thing that we did find is that, well, not a surprise, far more species where you would find at Sweet Flag because there's just more habitat. It's on a big island, Aquidneck Island. There's things like woodpeckers and blue jays. You just don't get those on a small little Rhode Island. So that's no surprise. The surprise is this. The surprise is that there's more birds, like bird biomass out there on Rhode Island. And we catch more birds on Rhode Island. So these little islands out in Narragansett Bay may be really important for migratory birds. You don't get a lot of species, but the ones that are there seem to be doing pretty well. And even more so than that, when you look at the young birds that you capture on these islands, there's far more young birds being born and surviving on Rhode Island than on what I'll call the mainland, Aquidneck Island. So there are some important field sites that are really important for us to conserve. We also, because we ban the birds, we can catch birds between years, and this is pretty amazing. A little tiny songbird is going to leave Rhode Island or Sweet Flag, and it's going to fly all the way down to Central and South America, and it's going to fly all the way back up, and it's going to come back to the exact same place. And so if they can survive that journey, they come back to the same place. So their return rates are like 30%, which is pretty good, really, given that they probably have about a 50% chance of living from one year to the next, these small birds. So when they find a habitat, they come back. And again, I'll turn to my friends at the Northern Bird Sanctuary who are stewards of really great habitat. The birds that are there, I bet you they're coming back. Same birds, if they survive their overwinter period. So the survivorship is the same between both sites for the adults. It's the young birds. And that's the productivity that we need to have. We need more young birds surviving to keep these populations turning around. So the main conclusions then from the work that I've been doing is one, that you've got a situation like Rhode Island where there's lower species richness and certainly some higher abundance, in some cases better productivity and survivorship than on the mainland, what I call Aquidneck Island, the mainland. And this really turns our attention to all these nice small islands that are protected in Narragansett Bay and how important those may be. But there may also be, and this is my main point, which will tie to my future direction, there may be other undeveloped locations that have really high breeding success, not necessarily on islands, but habitat islands, which may have really important population sources where birds do well, have lots of young, and the young fledge from those areas and move on. So those are some takeaways from the work that I was able to analyze. I'll also add that there's nothing like getting people out to see birds and be in nature to help this entire movement of conservation. And the education that goes on is so important. And I especially like the picture in the middle because that's my daughter, Tori, and who's now 22, which just seems crazy. Fortunately, I haven't aged, but she has. Okay, shifting gears, or tacking, a couple of new techniques that I've learned. This part won't be as long, but I think it'll be maybe as equally as exciting. Some new techniques that I've picked up during sabbatical that I'm bringing back to Salve to share with the students to engage in research. And one is recording and analyzing bat echolocation, recording and analyzing birdsong, and then we recently I have joined, well, I say we because I'm looking at this campus, we have joined a network of climate change observers. So first, we have to go to Brazil. And Mark Baker is right here in the front row who has set up this amazing trip to Brazil that we go on his boat. His crew takes us there. It's fabulous. And we're going back January 2027. Anybody who wants to come, join us. And I also have to give a shout out to Erin Fitzgerald, who's over here, because she runs our study abroad office, and she makes it so easy to put together a trip going abroad. All you have to do pretty much is have an idea about where you want to go, and Erin amazingly puts it together and makes it work. So it's great. So I put this in because I started off sabbatical by doing what I'm not supposed to do, and that is going someplace where, with students to go on a trip. I'm going to Brazil if I can. So we went to Brazil, and that's the Tucano, that's the ship that we lived on, and we got to explore the rainforest, and you can see my co-leader there, Sister Therese, who came along with us, which was fabulous. But this trip I did something different, and the students who are here know that, who were on this trip. I put out a bat detector at night, right as the sun was going down, and you can see that little blue dot, that's where we were, middle of the Amazon basin on that little white ship. Oh, it's a beautiful white ship that Mark built, and it's fabulous. And so for 5 nights of observation, recording these birds, I picked up the bats, picked up their pulses of echolocation with this device called a mini bat detector, and using a program called Kaleidoscope, which uses AI technology to match the echolocation pulses back to what are known echolocations for bats. and give you a report back on the bats. So those, oh, I lose my mic. Maybe I lost my mic. Technology's going down. All right. Anyway, you can just gander at that for a minute. 25 species of bats. We had 7,371 pulses that were picked up, and are we back? I'm back. And I had to. This is why I need sabbatical. I had to go through every single one of those and verify it visually, so that took a while. You'll see the biggest bar on the top says no ID because, well, bats make all kinds of different pulses with their echolocation. We're also in the Amazon where we don't know the bats that well. There are lots of things that are definitely bats. We don't know what they are, and I can post-analyze those, but that would take a while. If I just go on the definite hits that we have, positive identification, that's 25 species of bats that we picked up on 5 nights. So here's one of them, a black mastiff bat flying at night, and we can also look at when does it fly. Well, it typically comes out right around, we put the detector right around 5 o'clock, so around 6 o'clock it begins to make its flight. They're active most of the night. They're high flyers. They probably like flying near the ship because it has lights, it tracks bugs. And then it begins to taper off towards dawn, and it's done by 4 a.m. It's done. It's gone back to roost. If I look at 4 other species of bats, this is even more interesting, I think. And you might know some of these bats. You might know the ghost bat. It gets a lot of play on public television because it's white. How many bats are white? Well, the ghost bat is white. And that's shown in the blue line. And if you look at that blue line, what does it do? It's crepuscular. It comes out right after the sun goes down, and then numbers kind of drop off, and then suddenly, right before dawn, it gets active again. So it's really active at that period of time. And these are all aerial insectivores. And then if you look at the orange line, that's the Wagner's bonneted bat. And it's active right around 7 or 8 o'clock, and that's pretty much it. And it kind of drops off after that. So they really partition out their time and space eating insects right in the middle of the Rio Negro. The velvety free-tailed bat and the greater dog-like bat are the other lines that are there. And you can see they tend to be more active right towards the middle of the night, right around midnight to 1 a.m. is when they peak. So 4 species of bats, all eating insects, all eating them at different times. And we discovered this in the Amazon basin, and there's not a whole lot of people studying bats in the Amazon basin. So we're finding really interesting new discoveries, and our students can use this technology and do this analysis now that I've figured it out. And we're going to be able to put this bat detector up at the bird sanctuary this summer, which would be pretty awesome to see what comes to Red Maple Pond. So somebody's going to get to analyze these data with me. I can also learn how to record bird song. I went to took a course on recording bird song, and I'm going to love this. This is going to be great. Hang on. So I went up to Maine, and I found northern parula, and this is me. I recorded this myself. I'm so proud. Great? Yeah, that's great. And what's more than just catching the sound is that I can then analyze the sound in a program called Raven, and I can get some metrics off this bird sound, which you can see on that line that says Maine, okay? And just to give you a sense of what you can do, and this is not a full analysis at this point, I'm still working my way through how to do this, but there's a whole community of people who record bird sounds, and they post it free online, so you can get data from all over the world, honestly. So I just pulled up a couple more. Another northern parula recorded in Prince Edward Island. Here we go. And when this goes, just ignore the Swainson's thrush that comes first, because you'll be like, that's different. It is. It's not. It comes toward in the middle. Not that. Right? Northern parula. Here's another one. This one is from Michigan. You hear how they're different? Probably not really too much, but we don't hear it like they hear it, right? That's the whole point, is that their tonal frequencies they're dialed into, and they pick up on this. It's hard for us to pick up on this, but we can record it, and then we can analyze it and get the statistics and see how they might vary. So there's a whole lot of data available to me and my students to now that I've learned this technique and this technology to draw this in. So I'm really excited to bring this back into classes in the fall. Okay. Oh, another depressing picture. It's climate change, right? If we talk about biodiversity, you got to talk about climate change. And one of my biggest puzzles has been, is how do I study climate change in only one place at one time? It's really a challenge. But if you can join other people and be part of a network, well, then you can. So I joined a network. I found a network during sabbatical. I did a lot of research, figuring out like who's doing this work, where is the work being done, where is the data being shared, and I found this group called the National Phenology Network. Phenology just means like change of organisms' behavior and plant patterns over time. And I went through a 10-week training program, and I have registered our campus as one of the sites. That's the green dot that you see in Rhode Island, one of the green dots in Rhode Island. The other one is the Northern Bird Sanctuary. So we are the only 2 active National Phenology Network sites in the state. So there we go. Yeah, awesome. What does that mean? Well, we have to go out and track organisms. We have a small list of organisms that we have to track on a regular basis. I see members of the Tree Hawks Club in the back, and so they're going to be helping me do that on campus. But this is what happens when you join this network. We can get data like these. So we can look at, this is looking at 50-degree warming days across the country, and plants begin to go into spring production around 50 degrees Fahrenheit when you get enough of those days in a row. And you can see that, you know, on the left-hand side, you can see when those days come. So if you're up in Maine, it's going to come around the 20th of May, but if you're down in Washington, D.C., it might be as early as February. The graph on the right tells you what's been changing, and that shows that there's a lot of variation in those days of 50 degrees, but they're coming earlier. And that's what we would expect. So we can actually be part of the data about how the climate is changing on the ground, looking at the organisms as we see them. One of the organisms that we get concerned about, of course, are invasive species. So we can also track, well, when might things like the eastern ash borer begin to arrive, this little tiny green insect that can just devastate ash trees. It arrived in Rhode Island only in 2018. So it hasn't been here long, and it's overwintering, and it will emerge. And according to this map for this year, this was just produced a couple days ago, this will emerge somewhere in the next couple of months. It's about 2 months out. So that kind of helps us be aware of what's around, what's coming, and how these change with climate change. So we're part of a massive database because of our collecting of the data, and then we're part of the network, and the network, and we have the data available that we can use. And with students doing research, that's so valuable to have those data. Tying it back to what we're also doing with birds, and that is, what is a bird trying to do when they fly up here? When the yellow warblers come up here, Rhode Island or sweet flag, what are they doing? They're arriving in time to lay their eggs, find a territory, find a mate, lay eggs. The eggs incubate for about 12 to 14 days, and then they hatch. And you want the eggs to hatch, the birds want the eggs to hatch right when all the insects are available. Well, if climate is warming, and it is, and the insects begin to emerge earlier, and they do, then when the birds' young hatch, the food is already passed. That's a phenological mismatch. Now, will the birds evolve and begin to shift? Probably, they should. But their populations are down, already their habitat is minimized. So we got to work pretty hard to ensure that we can do the best we can for the birds and give them what they need to be successful, keep their populations as large as possible so that they can evolve these changes rapidly. And so it's this combination of old research, thinking about what new questions I want to answer, thinking about what's coming ahead, and thinking about using these new techniques has brought me to the last part of this, and that is new directions. So that new direction really starts with, I think Kathleen Farley is back there somewhere. Where's Kath? There she is. Kathleen Farley and the Compass program has just been an amazing place for faculty to think about what new ways can I try to engage students that I don't have time to do during the normal academic year, can I put into a 2-week period in May or June and really get into some really great student engagement. It's free for the students, it's great for the faculty, and I tested this out with the field ecology program for just a couple weeks at a time, and we found our way over to the nest boxes over at the bird sanctuary. 300 nest boxes, I might add. and our students were collecting data. And this is fabulous because the tree swallows, one of the most precipitous declines are the aerial insectivores, and the bird sanctuary is providing what they critically need, nesting habitat, and we can monitor what happens in the nest, the timing of what goes on. We can put this whole piece together, looking at climate change, phenological mismatch, how bird populations respond, all right on the 300-acre property just around the corner from here. Just amazing. So, thanks to the bird sanctuary for allowing this to happen. I think we were a good service in all that, but thanks to Salve and the Compass program, which gave the opportunity to come up with this idea about a summer field ecology program. So this has been really fabulous. I also should add that another piece of this future direction is also tied to something that's been going on for a little while under two different Davis Educational Foundation grants, civic engagement and community engagement. I've been engaging with the Northern Bird Sanctuary for a couple of years now and my conservation biology class. Now to have a community engaged class, in case you're not familiar with what that means, it means that 30% of my class time and energy and grade for the student is tied to the community partnership. So it's more than just community service. This is a full-on engagement of activities. And more so than that, I invite my colleagues at the Bird Sanctuary to be part of the syllabus process early in the semester. They look at the syllabus with me. We think about the semester ahead, what the students are going to learn. They become co-instructors. That is, the students learn so much from being with my colleagues at Northern Bird Sanctuary. And that learning is so valuable. And I think there's a number of students here who've been in conservation biology and have done this. You just raise your hand just to get an idea of who's in the room, currently in the room. Yeah, it's a good number here. So they can either tell me that I'm right on or that I'm totally crazy later. You can ask them, but I think I've got this right. These are some pictures from 2023 and 2024, some of the projects the students were doing. A lot of invasive species removal, putting up the nest boxes, but also working on a number of other projects like water quality. And if you're interested to see what this year's students are doing, you can come to the Bird Sanctuary on April 27th at noon and get to hear what they've been doing. The challenge for the faculty in the room when you do this is that I had a conservation biology class that would meet 3 times a week, and I would lecture all the way through that time, and I would give standard exams, and they would write papers. And now I'm going to take 30% of that away. What 30% of your course would you give up? That's a really hard thing for a faculty member to do, to think about what you're going to give up. But I can tell you that what you give up, you get back in spades. It's amazing what you get back in return. And during sabbatical, I was able to analyze some of those data. So here's what I have. So 2016 was the last time I taught like a normal conservation biology class, like your standard 3 credit, 3 times a week kind of a course with the typical exams and papers. And I have a cumulative final exam. I know students here who know me, my final exams are grimacing right now when they think about what that looks like. But it's a good measure of what have you learned all semester. And so in 2016, I have that score up there for you. And when I had the exam in 2022 and 2023, when I had this community engagement, now again, I gave up 30% of the material, but it didn't mean I didn't cover material. They were getting the material in the field with the bird sanctuary, right? So they were working side by side with the practitioners in the field and looking at what they do and why they do it and the questions that they're asking, and then reading materials in the textbook. And then they're asked the same kinds of questions on the exam, and they perform better by with me doing less lecturing, and they do more work, they learn more. That's my takeaway. Now you might say, the skeptic faculty member in the room, there must be at least one here, who's going to say, oh yeah, I bet the class is a whole lot easier, right? Well, when you look at the final grade over there, going across, it's statistically the same. That is, the rigor of the overall course and the overall grade is the same. So the course hasn't gotten any easier, but the students learn more. I'm going to let you just rest on this reflective essay for a moment. Yeah, that's powerful, right? That's powerful. So I'm tacking. Okay. I see where we got to go, and I think I got a way to get there. And this is my partnership I'm building with the Bird Sanctuary, and I've just been really blessed that they've welcomed this conversation and this partnership. So we're developing a sustainable partnership, because I'm not just going and getting involved with an organization, just sort of dropping in and then pulling out. This is like full on. And we're going to talk about education, management, and the science of conservation all woven together. And it's always got to be, it's South Bay, Virginia. It has to be student-centered, and it's community engaged. That's us. So I'm just going to call it Conservation Science Center. That's not official. Not, it could be official. I think it's a good name, but it's not official. But what are we going to do? We're going to empirically do what I've been doing. Empirically test the relationship between habitat quality and biological diversity. I've been doing that my whole career. That's what we're doing. We're going to do that with students at the Bird Sanctuary. What we learn will immediately begin to inform educational programs, and we're going to build a ladder so that young campers, young explorers coming to the Bird Sanctuary, getting really excited about nature, like I was as a young person, see a ladder. And the ladder that they climb into is conservation science. And they can be right in there with us doing the good science. And it's not me coming in asking my own questions. I'm talking to the folks at the Bird Sanctuary. What are they challenged with? What are the questions that they have? How do we take their questions and turn them into science questions? And then what data do we need to collect and analyze to inform? And that can inform not only the practices of the Bird Sanctuary, but what we learn at the Bird Sanctuary can be applied to other places. So it's an experimental workbench, essentially, in conservation, and it's just around the corner. This, to give you a sense of what it looks like right now. So I've got my class, and some of them are here, and the Bird Sanctuary folks came to my class. So Sarah and Joy and Bella and Kathleen came to class, and they basically said to the class, here are a bunch of needs that we have. Here are the things we're working on. And the students listened to what they said, and they formed their own ideas of what they thought they could do and they could achieve by the end of the semester. And then they made those pitches back to the Bird Sanctuary, who then could accept or reject their pitches. And what formed were 5 groups. Each one has a dedicated member of the Bird Sanctuary as their lead contact, and the students figure out their own time to get to the Bird Sanctuary and do the work that needs to get done to answer these questions. These are the 5 areas they're working on. They also do good conservation service work, because there's a lot of work to get done, and we help on those dates. And what that then turns into, and I should point out that if you come on April 27th at noon, you're going to hear from all those projects and what the success was. But what comes out of that is some of these students I can predict, because the past predicts the future, they will stick around. They will stay at the Bird Sanctuary. They will continue to help out. Just 2 of many examples. Joe Powers is doing a great project all year with the pollinator gardens and a pollinator survey, and now he's going to be heading off to Maine to be an educator. And Maya Baldoff did work on water quality a few years ago, and she currently works for DEM and does water quality work for them. So it's a really great ground. But what they find, what they carry on from the class, then feeds back into the next year's class and also other research questions. So it's a wonderful cycle that we're in. And why stop at the end of the semester when you got the summer coming up? And so we've got a whole summer program going on. We created an ecology field school, and we got 5 students who are going to help me. We're going to be there for all of June, every day, doing really awesome field work, designing experiments, studying birds, helping out wherever we're needed at the Bird Sanctuary. The students will wrap up in June, but I'm going to still be there in July because the birds aren't going away, and I'll have interns and volunteers, and maybe you will come in and give us a hand. So that's where we're going. And basically what I found is that there's a conservation ecosystem at the Bird Sanctuary. I put all these great partners, and some of them are here today. Both education and science and management, and I put them into these silos, and I guarantee you they're looking at those silos going, that's not just what I do, because that's not how it really works. But those are 3 main areas, and they're all tied together. under the direction of a wonderful executive director, Katie Ryan. I've been able to enter into this ecosystem. And this is great for the students, it's great for me. I can see where I can continue to sail upwind and make direction where I want to go and conserving biological diversity. And I've got a great place and great partners to work with. And this is my invitation to the faculty who are out here is, before you leave, the bird sanctuary folks are here. What do you work on? Like, what's your ecosystem? Like, how can you bring your skills and your students to bear at the bird sanctuary and help the bird sanctuary meet its goals? And believe me, your students learn a ton if you can get involved there. So that's an invitation. And for the students, there's so many ways to get involved with the bird sanctuary. So you can just stop by the table and talk to them about what's going on and how you can get involved. It's not just science, not just conservation. You've got people who are doing work in business and in marketing and there's probably other things I can't think of. My brain's going a little mushy right now, so because I'm right at the end. So I think with that invitation, and my invitation is a call for action. So before you leave today, talk to somebody who's at the bird sanctuary or one of the students who's been involved in the bird sanctuary and learn more from them directly. But I'm going to stop here on this gorgeous picture and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
So, question. I will start us off while people are thinking. Dr. Chace, so is this, you said this is a 255 course? That it's a 200 level course?
It's a 200 level course.
So do you have non-majors in this course?
Well, we have a variety of majors in the course because the entry is pretty simple. I mean, typically there's a requirement for Bio 140, but not always. If the student asks, they can be allowed to come in. Yes.
So have you found that this model has engaged students to come over to become bio or environmental science majors? Had you had people who are kind of on the fence who moved into it?
I don't know. I think most people who've come into the class have already joined the major or the minor, majors or minor. But we have a lot of minors from other majors who have taken something else that's gotten them excited, and then they have come in that way.
That's interesting. And raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, great.
Thank you, Dr. Chace.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chace. That was wonderful. I want to ask you, how does your work intersect with public policy?
That's a good question from you, who has our public policy minor director, Mary Anderson. Thank you for that. So, in many of the things that we want to do, we want to achieve, we collect the data for the science, we try to educate people, we want to manage things, but in the end we need to come up with policies as what to do. So whether it's a policy on rodenticides or policy on fertilizers, a policy, that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge, is to move from the information, the education, to actually creating policy or laws, regulations. And so that's where I turn to the experts who do that work to say, let's move it in that direction, which is why I'm so excited that we have this new minor in public policy, because it'll allow us to have more of those conversations.
I've got a question about the bird sounds, and you mentioned that there's a difference between the ones that you showed. Is that like a regional dialect? And if so, what's that based on?
Yeah, so I'm looking at James Mitchell in the back, because he and I have spoken about this, because people don't realize that Dr. Mitchell actually was a biologist at one time, and now he's a linguist. And so we have talked about this. So birds, many birds learn their song. The songbirds, most of them learn their song. And that means if you're learning your song, and you're learning your song partly from your parents and partly in the community in which you live, then different communities will develop different dialects. And so absolutely there are dialects of song for most songbird species across the continent.
So you would be able to recognize a bird from Michigan if you listen to it, if you know that. Or...
If I had my raven and I could then analyze the data, I could. Hearing it by ear. Now, there are some you certainly can, and Chris Powell is nodding because Chris Powell, he could hear perhaps a song sparrow from different parts of the country and probably tell you where it's from.
I wish.
Thanks, Jim. That was wonderful. Excellent. I want to be a birder.
There's time. You can do that.
Thanks. But how do the bats fit into all of this? You showed us the bats in Brazil, but is there any future bat history that you're going to talk about?
Well, the bats are interesting for a couple of reasons. One is they're not that well known. They are aerial insectivores, so like the bird insectivores, they are also populations that are in trouble. We just don't have the kinds of numbers on bats that we do on birds. We don't have as many people out listening for bats. So we don't know as much about the bats as we do about the birds. But they're still very important, obviously. I don't know where the work will take us with the bats. We're going to see where that happens. But having the tools to collect their sounds and then analyze their sounds gives us an entry point. And that was the exciting piece when I picked up this bat detector, because it's actually a bird and bat detector. So originally when I purchased it, it was for recording bird sounds in places where I couldn't be. So I could set it out, it would record the bird songs, so I could analyze them later to say, well, who's here? But then I realized, oh, I can also go into the ultrasonic range and pick up bats. That's why it's called the mini bat detector. And so that's where I started dabbling into that area. So it's kind of an exploration because the tool allows it, and we'll see where it goes.
Hi, Dr. Chace. Well, first of all, extraordinary as always. And I remember even during that semester that you were out, I was still emailing you being like, help! You were still responding, so thank you for that. In all this, I mean, obviously from faculty like yourself that are always excited to teach and get students involved, what do you say, like from your perspective, the role of the students to respond back to all of these efforts that you're doing to help us as much as you can?
I'm really trying to just open up avenues for students, because students I find are amazingly creative and thoughtful and ask really great questions if we just give them the space to do that. And when we do, my favorite piece is to get that started and then just step back and then watch it happen. And that is just, to me, the most fabulous moments. And then the student becomes the leader, it becomes the student's project, it becomes the student's data collection. They are fully invested in the work that we're doing and the outcomes of that work, and they take a great ownership for it. And that is the most powerful piece of education that I get to experience. So, you know, some students are more ready for it at different times than others, and more responsible at those times, and that's okay, because people come to it at their own times. I'm there to be as supportive as I can be for some, and some I can step back sooner, and others, I'm more of a support and guide along the way. So it depends. It's individual, and just to kind of build on to that a little bit, I mean, it's that kind of relationship and mentorship that I found really exciting for me when I was a young person, and I really enjoyed the time when the professor stood back and let me just sort of find my way, and stumble sometimes, mostly, I guess, really, and on my own, but gave me the opportunity. Does that answer your question? Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Chace, one of our biggest Compass Summer champions, helped us to design but also launch that program every year. And a little plug, today is Salve's Day of Giving, and there is a really lovely experiential learning fund. So help fund these opportunities that you're providing. But I'm wondering, as we thought about those projects, we wanted it to be focused on a critical concern of mercy and have that connection for the students, and certainly so many of your programs that you've done focus on the critical concern of the earth. But I'm wondering if in your reflection time and through those programs, if there have been any other interesting moments of any other connections that either the students helped you to see or that you made yourself as far as any other connections to the concerns.
To other concerns? I would have to say that being at Salve, I've been very, and working with the students at Salve and my colleagues at Salve is just struck by the power of women and that role, I think, of a critical concern, the rights of women, and just watching that this seems to be a really great place for leadership skills and women especially to emerge. And then I also think that maybe in our current time that we're in, just thinking about the critical concern of nonviolence and how our campus, maybe not necessarily on my programs, but just my campus or conversations has emerged in that way. And just I guess those two.
Thank you.
I'll ask you a loaded question, Jim. Having been to the Amazon a couple times on Mark's trip, and I know you took a bunch of students down there, what do you think the students took away from that experience in the Amazon that they can apply here on, say, Aquidneck Island?
Wow. Some of them are here, so we could probably ask them. I think that, like when I first went to the tropics, it was the sense of being overwhelmed in a place of so much life and so much biological diversity, and then recognizing, we talk so much about the tropics, or the rainforest, the lungs of the planet, and but we don't often get a chance to go experience it. But then to actually be in the middle of it and to experience it, I think is the piece that's going to stay with people for a long time, and I believe that impacts the students. I think the cultural dimensions of the trip also impact the students because our guides are from indigenous cultures in Brazil, and they share with the students what their life is like and has been like, and their ability to move and live with the land, I think, is really striking to them. And then I think the third piece of the trip that comes to mind that really strikes the students when they return is they actually can go 7 days without cell service and be just fine. Yeah. But maybe if there's a student here who's on the trip, they could speak to that. But I see someone else has a microphone.
Hi, as someone from New Jersey, like when I came to Salve, I've seen like a bunch of Save the Bay flyers around Newport, and I was just curious your opinion regarding Save the Bay and the windmills and how like they affect the bird population.
So the signs that have the no wind turbine, save our seas. I don't want to confuse that with the great organization Save the Bay. Yeah, okay. So I guess a couple of things. This could be a really long piece, but I'm going to keep it as short as I can, and we can talk later. So the first step is that we're facing a global crisis of climate change, and we also have very significant energy demands, and the cost of electricity is going up, and if the state of Rhode Island can produce its own electricity and do so in a sustainable, renewable way, then we should, and we have that opportunity offshore to do that. Can we do that in a reliable and reasonable way to ensure that we're not impacting wildlife and biological diversity when we do that? I've got two really great friends and colleagues at the University of Rhode Island who spent over 10 years ensuring that the site where these were going to go was going to be okay. That this was fully vetted, I mean, in ways from ocean sampling, bottom floor sampling, bird sampling, whale and dolphin sampling. These are very carefully thought out projects, long-term lots of great science is going on. It doesn't mean we can't make a mistake, but we've done the due diligence. They've done the due diligence to make sure that would happen. So I think we're in a good place that way. You know, does it visually not look great? Someone might feel that way, and I can respect that. If you don't want to look out at the ocean and see blinking lights, I understand that. But as far as the other concerns that I think that they're putting up about Save Our Seas, if it's not just visual pollution, I really don't think they have much to stand on scientifically. And any impacts that they're talking about with whales, if you really want to save whales, there's two things we know you can do. Stop eating anything that comes out of the sea from a lobster trap or a fishing net because they get caught up in that material. And don't buy anything that comes by a container ship from overseas because they strike the whales. Those two, that's what's killing whales. Could wind turbines potentially have vibrations that affect whales? I suppose, but it's been studied pretty well. But ships and fishing nets, those are the two big ones. So that's my, is that a short answer? It's about as short as I can make it.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for this wonderful talk. It's been really fascinating. I was paying attention to the migration portion of your talk where you mentioned that you saw some of the species taking on more mass on Rhode Island versus on at the place where you were.
Sweet Flag.
Thank you. And so it's kind of a two-part question. I wondered, could it be that there are fewer threats to them on Rhode Island? And then also, if you're looking to do more and maybe expand your reach, are there other islands in Narragansett Bay, maybe Prudence Island or something, that you might be able to expand your research to? Thanks.
All right, several questions there. First one, the combination of the islands wasn't looking at body mass that they were gaining, but it was the success of the birds. It was their actual success of breeding and productivity of how many young that they were having. Although I have banded birds on Rhode Island in the fall a couple of times, just a couple of days, and I was pretty impressed by how fat those little birds were. So there might be something to what you just said. I don't have the data to back it up, but just a couple of sample days. You know, again, if I didn't have to teach all the time, I could be out on Rhode Island banding birds, but I can't, so I'm not. But I'm sure that the islands are also very important refuges during migration. Could the other islands also be good, important places? I'm gonna bet yes on the smaller islands that don't have house cats, that don't have snakes, and don't have crows, which would be the major. The major threat to birds. This is kind of surprising, maybe a little gruesome, but the major threat to birds on Rhode Island are gulls. Gulls are vicious little predators. Yeah, so little birds, look out, because the gulls will get you. Prudence Island's pretty big, and there's a lot of people who live there, so that may not be the best spot. But if you think about like Patience Island and Hope Island and Gould Island and the other Gould Island, those, maybe Dutch Island, those I think, yes, absolutely. And the fact that we don't have people who go to most of those places, let's just maybe keep it that way.
Thank you so much for this amazing presentation, Dr. Chace. We are so grateful to you for sharing our research, and please let's continue the conversation over snacks. So thank you again.
Remember your homework assignment. You got to meet somebody from the bird sanctuary or one of the students who's on the bird sanctuary before you leave. All right.
I met you. I'm bored.